Hey, this is the Mile High Magnum Dak Draper, and you're watching the 3 Count Podcast. So you better pay close attention, because if you don't, then shame on you.
I'm in fashion, roll with cold passion.
Welcome everybody to another great edition of the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Entering Ring, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller. That's right, the man that leads you up this mountain called wrestling. You could call me your Sherpa. You better call me your Sherpa after all the episodes I've asked you to do that for. But like every good Sherpa, you gotta have someone who's been there, done that, and could do it more efficiently than you can. And that's why it's never about me, but it's about who's entering the ring. So today, he comes to us from MCW, SLA, ROH, ECPW, Beyond Glory Pro, DWF, NEW, HOW, NWL. He is the Mile High Magnum, Dak Draper.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Red Dog.
Hey, man, I appreciate it, dude. This is awesome. Thank you for coming on and talking with us.
Hey, you said you're a Sherpa. I'm from the mountains, so you're speaking my language.
That's right. Mile High City represent. That's what we do.
Right?
Full transparency for everybody who don't know, I'm a massive Denver fan, and in all aspects of life, except I do not follow the Buffaloes. I'm not a Colorado Buffalo fan or a Rams fan. That's not my thing.
Hey, that's fine. Like, as long as you're a Broncos fan, I'm good with it.
Hell yeah, man. That's all I'm about. Yeah, man. So we've met a couple times. We actually started chopping it up. We at undisclosed location. We ain't gonna talk about it. You guys don't need to worry about that part. But we've been kicking it and just talking back and forth, man. And finally, I was like, "Hey, man, let's bring you on the podcast." And here we are, man. So my first question off the jump: who is Dak Draper?
Man, I'm the living tall tale. There's so many good things about me. It's hard to believe that I'm real. Like I'm tall, I'm tan, I look good, I can talk well, I'm athletic, and I'll tell people this, and they won't believe it till they see me wrestle. And so Dak Draper is, I would say I'm like Paul Bunyan. I'm like Pecos Bill. I am John Henry, all rolled into one. Once you see me, you can't stop telling stories about me to everybody you know, to all your loved ones, to grandma, all the way down to the little kids, all the way to the family dog.
Yeah, it's because you are very tall. There is no lie in that game. Like I was like, all right. I was like, and the craziest things, right? Like, I know a lot of people out there will say, like, well, I watch wrestling all the time. Like, those guys don't look that tall until you meet that person in real life. And you're like, yeah, no, you are ridiculously tall.
Yeah. That is a thing. Like, camera either makes you look bigger or smaller sometimes.
Bet. So I'm curious, man. I know part of the story. I'm just very curious. And for our listeners and viewers out there, how did you get into the sport?
So it's funny. Pro wrestling led me into amateur wrestling, which led me back into pro wrestling. So when I was a little kid, I loved watching wrestling on TV, but my mom hated it. And so in order to watch Monday Night Raw, she was like, you got to go to wrestling practice. So I had to go to kids wrestling practice at the Air Force Academy, which is in Colorado Springs.
Oh,
and I hated it so much. I liked the actual wrestling part, but the warm-ups and the conditioning, I couldn't stand. I didn't mind the conditioning as much as the warm-ups. I was always like, why are we running before we wrestle? This is so stupid. I would always try to hide in the bathroom, and the coach, who was like an Olympian, would have to go like pull me out of the bathroom. And I was probably like his least favorite kid. He probably loved when I wasn't there. But I ended up like falling in love with amateur wrestling, and then wrestled all through high school, wrestled in college, and then my senior year at the national tournament, I was approached by a WWE talent scout, and he offered me a tryout to come to Florida to do a tryout to see if I was like this is when they were signing a lot of athletes. If I was an athlete, they wanted to teach how to wrestle, and I ended up getting signed, and the rest is kind of history. It's all kind of been a whirlwind since.
Yeah, it's interesting because like your story is just so similar to mine, right? Because like I was actually born in Penrose Hospital in Colorado Springs.
Wow, that's amazing.
And my dad at one time used to live in Fort Morgan, and I was an amateur wrestler as well from like 6th grade all the way to my sophomore year in college. And I'll be honest, I failed out after destroying my shoulders. So I was like, I don't really need to be here. So I decided I wanted to do something, and I ended up joining the military. But yeah, and then I followed you, and I was like, holy crap! I was like, there's so much stuff that's going on as I'm being joined by a special guest. That's Duke.
Duke,
Yo,
Dog Draper.
hey,
Very tired.
Look, man, like you guys can be friends.
He's tired from being bad all day.
Yeah, see, that's what I was talking about. He's like running, like before we were recording, he was running around the house, and they were like, "Nope, just take him into his room, and he'll hang out with Dad. He'll be fine." So, but yeah, so I've been following, and we legitimately, I got my bombshell. My head was blown when I found out that you actually wrestled at a place where I had a couple of my friends actually, one, wrestle and two, play football. So I was like, "Yo, this is so crazy."
Yeah, that's such a small world thing. Yeah, we have a mutual friend who was he was a teammate and then a coach of mine in college, and it's really funny how that happens. Like every once in a while, you meet somebody through wrestling who like has so much in common with you. You're like, oh my god, like we've probably crossed paths at some point before pro wrestling. Hey,
Yes.
Draper, cool it. Sorry, he's throwing himself around on the couch.
That's all right. He'll probably get up, walk around, probably go sit in the corner and stuff, and you'll just see him move around all over the place. So he's the same way. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like it's insane to think like how small the world is. I was actually telling the story to a friend of mine. Actually, that it's a place where we first met. But I was telling him about how I was in Iraq, and I saw a guy walking around. And I was like, dude, like, I think I know that kid. So I walked up to him and I asked him, I was like, hey, is your name this? And he was like, yeah. I was like, dude, we played baseball together in like fourth grade. And he was
Wow.
like, yeah. It was the last time I saw him. And yeah, we just happened to just see each other. So it was crazy. Like,
that's nuts.
That's what I was like, yo, it is a very small world out there. And especially in our field where everybody you meet knows somebody who knows that person, and you're just like, this is wild.
6 degrees of separation.
Right. So it's crazy, man. I love asking this question a lot. This is one of my favorite questions, but I need to know, what's the worst bump you've taken?
Oh, the worst bump that I've ever taken was I do a springboard back elbow into the ring. So if I'm on the run, I jump and I bounce off the second rope and I come off back into the ring towards the guy who's in the center of the ring. So I went for this springboard back elbow, and he jumped up to try and counter it with a cutter. And as he jumped up to try and counter it, or a neck breaker, as he jumped up to try and counter it, he jumped into me as I came back, and my head got pushed forward so hard while I was in the air that it cracked my sternum from how hard my chin pushed into my sternum, and then my neck was like destroyed from it too. It was I didn't get back in a ring I was out for like 4 months. Like it was awful. It was like anytime I would like think that I could like feel kind of up to moving around, and I'd go to do like some 3/4 rolls in the ring, the sternum was the worst part. The neck got better quicker, but the sternum was like, it took forever to heal. Like I didn't lift upper body for months and months and months. My upper body wasted away, which was so frustrating to look at to watch in the mirror. But that was definitely the worst bump I ever took. One of those bumps where like, I remember I hit and I heard my neck pop a bunch of times. And then I remember I looked at my boots, I looked at my feet, and I could move and I wiggled my feet back and forth. And I was like, oh, thank God. It was terrifying.
Oh no, I can imagine that definitely doesn't sound like something I want to do. It reminds me of, I don't know if you remember Chris Brown, running back for the Buffaloes. When he cracked his sternum at Tennessee for the Titans, I was like, and then he was just done. Like his career was over, and I was like, dude, that sucks, because he was such a good talent. Like I don't want to put Buffalo running backs over, but he was one of them.
So it's funny. My sternum, I've cracked it 3 times, and the first time I cracked it was the time you wouldn't expect at all, where I was wrestling this big Austrian guy named Mario Vanger, and he sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger, ridiculously tan, like really muscular, big dude. And I also do a move where if a guy's running and coming off the ropes, I'll try and cut him off and give him a forearm on the ropes. and he had so much force coming off the ropes that when we ran into each other and I gave him the forearm, his body pushed my fist into my sternum, and that's the first time it broke. And that's the first time it cracked. My sternum cracked. And then every time, and that was like the time when you would expect it the least. And every time since then it's happened. There was another time where I fell across a guardrail and it happened. And then that last time, but the first time was the time that like you would least expect it from. You would think that was the last time, like it had weakened up or something.
Damn.
So that's Dak Draper's greatest weakness. You think Dak Draper doesn't have a weakness? My greatest weakness is my sternum, but I protect it. And I'm like Tony Stark.
Yeah, you have to get a chest plate now and just call D'Lo. I'm sure he's around. He'll probably give you his.
Get the chest protector. I just need a very small chest protector.
Right. All right, so we can talk about your worst bump like we just did, but we also got to talk about the hardest hit. So I'm just curious, like, what's the hardest you've been hit?
Oh man, the hardest I've been hit. This kid, I don't even remember his name. His name might have been like Jory or something. I think it was Jory, Jory. We wrestled in Denver, Colorado, and he super kicked me. So these 3 teeth are fake, and they're a bridge. And he super kicked me so hard I felt my bridge move. And it's a funny story because after that happened, I had like a crack. I had a crack in the bridge. I could always feel it with my tongue. I could always feel this little crack, just like a little hairline. Never gave me trouble. And then I was at a Renaissance festival eating a turkey leg 2 years later. And it started to feel really loose. Like the pressure felt weird. And I was like, I probably need to make a dentist appointment. This is bad. I hadn't been to the dentist in over 2 years at this point. But you're a pro wrestler and sometimes things come up and there's not a whole lot of insurance going around for everybody. So I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of weird. Like this is probably getting a little loose. I probably need to take care of this bridge that has a crack in it. Then I go to order a root beer float later that day. And there's like a high school kid behind the counter at the root beer float stand. And as I say that I would like a root beer float, when I say at the F for float, this front tooth just breaks off and I catch it. And he like, his eyes go up big and he looks at me and he's like, did your tooth just fall out? And I'm like, I didn't know at this point. I was like, and I open my hand and we both look and there's my tooth in my hand. And I just look at him and say, yeah. And he was like, do you still want a root beer float? And I was like, no, I probably need to save my money for the dentist. And just walked off.
Oh, that's a trip though.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Jory.
I'm sure he'll know this story as soon as he hears it.
Jory with the super kick from hell, if that is his name even.
Yeah, right. Pretty soon you'll be like, oh no, it was Joey. That's right.
Yeah, right.
All right, man. Well, that's cool. Well, not cool that you lost your tooth, but it's a cool story.
It's
though.
a good story now.
Yeah, I'm just curious, man. Like, I know a lot of wrestlers have their pre-rituals as well as like a post-ritual, right? So I'm curious, man, what's your pre-ritual? And then after your match or an event, do you have a post-match snack or post-match meal?
My pre-match ritual, the day of, I try and get like a little workout in, like a little full body workout where I just go through like all my movement patterns, really warming up my hips. I really try and warm up my hips and my shoulders and like my scapula, like my back a lot. I really focus on like my posterior chain because like my glutes, everything, because I feel like wrestling is it's so much harder on your back than your back and your neck and your hips than anywhere else. So I try and get some movement. If I can't make it to a gym, I'll just get some body weight exercises where I'm just like really trying to make sure that I've got good circulation going. Even before, like if I have a long drive or a long flight coming up, I'll do it in the airport sometimes because I really feel like it helps before you travel to really get loose and to get everything activated. And then you get in the car. I feel like it's so much easier to warm up to get warmed up once you get done traveling. You get to the venue if you've already done it that day before you had to sit there and just be motionless. So that's something I try and do. And then when with my diet, I eat a lot of cream of rice because I feel like the day of shows, I don't want to be bloated. And cream of rice is carbs, so you're getting your carbs so you can look really like pumped up and you have your energy. And then I have protein shakes because obviously I want to still be getting protein in. But I always keep my fats pretty low on the day of. And then when I get to the venue, first thing I do is I hit the ring. I do some other exercises, some more little like neck and back activation exercises, because if I don't do it, I love to socialize at shows. So I'll start talking to the boys, start telling stories. I'm a big storyteller, and I'll forget. And then all of a sudden it's like, I'm like, my match is up in 2 matches. I'm still standing there in my sweatpants, and I'm still standing in my sweatpants and slippers, and I haven't warmed up at all. And so then I'm rushing to get all my gear on. So I get to the venue, I go through my little workout, and then I change. I have to be an early changer because I love to like hang out and talk and socialize. So if I don't change early, then I'm going to be rushing. Like, it's like my music's hitting and I'm lacing my boots up. So I have to change early to keep myself honest. And then post match, it's funny. Post match, I'll always bring a Tupperware that'll be like, it'll be, especially if I have a match the next day, it'll be something healthy, but something that I can get like some fats from. Like, it'll be like steak and protein pasta, or some steak and rice. Typically I do protein pasta because I like it more, and so I kind of try and reward myself. Most of the time I end up saving that and eating it the next day, because after the match I'm like tired, and I'll just like have a protein shake. And especially, if I'm drinking beers with the boys, I might have some bar food. Like, if I have like multiple matches, like multiple days in a row, then that's usually when I'll have like a little cheat meal to kind of replenish. Like, I'll get some, if the venue has food, or there's a bar to go out to afterwards, I'll go ahead and get like a burger or something where I'm getting some fats, and I'm getting some, I'm almost treating myself a little bit.
No, that's awesome. I know for me, I was like, my post-match meal is, if I can find a Sheetz or a Wawa, it's like I'm always getting a burger. I was like, that just, and it's usually because I'm driving like 5-6 hours back home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, like I'm just like, all right, let me grab this and a healthy energy drink.
Right. Isn't it funny how it's so funny how, especially on the East Coast, gas stations vary so much. Like in Connecticut, you have all those little weird gas stations off the Connecticut Turnpike where it's like, yes, they're all like little, there's like little, and I don't know. I'm from the West, where it is like truck stop. It is truck stops all the way, where you have like, you damn near a mini mall at an exit where you can pull off. And so that's definitely been an adjustment for me living out here on the East Coast.
Well, yeah, because like and for those who don't realize what we're talking about, like in Nebraska, like outside of Sydney, Nebraska, there's like that giant truck spot. I think it's called like Flying V. I think,
yeah,
I don't know, something like that. Yeah, and they have like everything that's in there. Like, if you're like, oh, I know truckers stop there all the time to like take showers in there and stuff, and then like I'm always thrown off.
I've got a good story about the Flying J truck stop.
Yeah.
That particular one in Sydney. So I wrestled at a college in Northwest Nebraska called Chadron State, as you know already. And we were going to a tournament at the University of Wyoming, and we stopped at the gas station in Sydney. I was cutting a lot of weight at the time. I was a freshman. I cut to 184 that year, and I typically walk around at 230. So now I'm about 240, but at the time it was 230. So I'm losing 46 pounds to make weight, and I'm obviously still very overweight, like not 46 pounds, but I'm like 10 pounds overweight. And I'm so tired. I'm trying to like dehydrate every 10 pounds out so that I can make weight the next day. And so I go and I try and go to the bathroom, and I'm so tired that I go to sit down. I go to sit down at a toilet because I'm so tired. I don't even want to stand up to pee. So I'm sitting in this stall, and when I shut the door, it felt like rickety. And then someone came in, and they pulled the other door to the stall, and my stall like was right next to the wall. So it was the wall right here, and then the stalls. The whole stall setup fell down. So I'm just sitting there in a toilet at this truck stop, exhausted, probably looking terrible and super skinny, just sitting there at this toilet at the truck stop, looking at all these people. Just all of a sudden, I'm in a room with all these people as I'm sitting at a toilet there. It was more.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yep. Not one of my.
It's crazy you're talking about, because full transparency, there was a conversation I was having on Twitter with the how would we call him, the wrestling insider himself, Dave Meltzer. We were talking about wrestling and cutting weight, and how you were talking about like going from 230 down to 184. And as a senior in high school, I went from 185 to 145 pounds. And like the dangers of yo-yo dieting is, yeah,
It's one of those things though where if I had the choice again, I wouldn't have done it.
right.
But I don't know. Maybe I would have because I think it was horrible for my body, but it made me so mentally strong. Like just to like realize where it was like I set a goal where it was like I have to make 184. I have to make 184 pounds, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make that weight. And just like to deprive yourself of so many things was like it was so hard and it was awful. But there was something rewarding about like, especially at the end of the season, like knowing that I had been so disciplined with myself that like you're capable of such over the top discipline. It makes, I don't know, it makes like sometimes when really like hard things come up in my life. Well, I'm a pro wrestler. There are a lot of hard things in my life, but when like things come up where it's like, they just seem so daunting. I think about how daunting it felt the first time my coach was like, I want you to go 184. Like that seemed like it was impossible. And then just like by chipping away and losing a pound, like trying to lose like a little less than a pound a day and really trying to stay on track and just like really like pushing away all the temptations and being so laser focused, like it made you realize that like you could really surprise yourself with the things you can accomplish.
Yeah, it is crazy. I remember like when I was in college my freshman year, right? Like, sorry, Northwestern. This is definitely a story I'm going to put out there. But I couldn't pass the hydration test. Like I was at 100. I weighed at 180 and I was trying to get down to 149 and I couldn't pass the hydration. I was like 147. Could not pass the hydration test to save my life.
Oh, I
So
know
I
this.
was like, I don't know what to do. It was like I legitimately like get up in the morning, like I do my morning pee. I'm feeling good. I fail the hydration test. So I was like, you know what? Like I made it here. I'm just gonna, let me drink some Mountain Dew, right? Code Red Mountain Dew, by the way. This episode isn't sponsored by Mountain Dew, but if you want to, we are accepting sponsorships. Anyway, so as I'm like trying to figure out what I'm gonna do, I start to realize like I'm peeing clear, but I had been drinking Code Red Mountain Dew. So I was like, well, let me do this, right? So that morning I get up, I buy a Code Red, I drink it, I give myself like a couple, a little bit of time. I go pee, I pee clear, and I pass the hydration test. And I was like, bruh, I found a miracle.
Yeah, you could do the same thing with like 4 grams of creatine, maybe 5 grams of creatine, and into a cup of coffee. Put the creatine directly in the cup of coffee, and I'm sure that's horrible for you.
Yeah.
Like, no one do these things.
Don't do it.
And I'm not saying that I did those to pass the hydration test either, but I just know, allegedly from experience, that's how you pass that's another way to pass the hydration test.
Look, we're not telling you no. So anyway. All right, so going on, right? Post-match meals. I'm curious because I know you've been in for quite some time. I just want to know, like, what's one of the hardest lessons that you've learned in pro wrestling?
When you think that you've made it, think again. There have been a lot of times where I've thought that I've either been really knocking on the door to, I guess, when I've thought that I've been at a higher spot than I am in the grand scheme of things in wrestling. And I feel like we always, you're the star of your own story.
Right.
And so I feel like there are a lot of times where something will happen, and through our eyes, because we're biased towards ourselves, we think that, oh man, there's nothing that can derail me now. And man, life has been great at surprising me with things that can derail your wrestling career. So that's probably the greatest lesson. And then this goes back to what I was talking about with weight cutting, where really just consistency and focus are two of the most important two of the most important things to focus on when you're trying to be successful. And just like trusting the process, sticking to it, really knowing what direction you want to head in, committing, and then going that direction, not getting straight off other directions.
Yeah, I like that because I know, like, for my wife, right? Her whole life she had a goal since like the age of 3, and she's accomplished that goal. Now she has to dream bigger of what she wants to accomplish, and so I look at her.
Problem to have.
What's that?
That's a good problem to have.
Right. And that's what I told her. I was like, well, you found your happiness. Now I'm going to go get mine. So I was like, I'm just going to run around like crazy till I figure it out. And like,
For real.
yeah. So now I feel like I'm on
Dude.
the right path. And I was like, yo, this is great. And I'm actually happy. She's happy. I'm happy. Like, shit. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. But it's the idea that you do have to stay disciplined in whatever you're trying to accomplish, because you have to know like the end goal you'll get to if you just keep consistent and stay disciplined to it.
Absolutely.
Yo, so I'm curious, man. I know like this may go hand in hand, so like the hardest lessons, but I'm just curious, like what advice would you give to up and coming wrestlers?
Man, challenge yourself. Don't get comfortable. If you're comfortable or you become the best guy in the room, find a new room. I feel like there were a lot of times, for example, I started wrestling in Colorado, and Colorado's geographically isolated. Like there are good guys there. There are guys that have wrestled for a long time that have a lot of knowledge there. But I think but you're in front of the same crowd always there. There aren't different shows that have different crowds. And I really feel like getting that experience in front of different audiences and traveling around and like being in different locker rooms so you can learn and get feedback from different guys is so important. Guys and girls is so important, because if you're just in front of one audience all the time, you're just in the locker rooms with the same people all the time over and over again, then everything becomes stale. You're not really learning, or you're learning the same lessons and you're not really pushing yourself. And I think it's so important to like really push yourself and to feel like you're in an environment where you're learning and getting better. I fell into the trap when I was living in Colorado for a while, where it was like, I'm like involved in this like this ongoing argument about who's the best wrestler in Colorado. And I was thinking about it, like, why did I ever waste any energy on that? I should have been wasting that energy on traveling and getting more bookings out of state and really furthering my career, instead of worrying about who's the king of a state that genuinely people don't care about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, those people are totally wrong though. Like everybody should care about that state.
Yeah, they should. But just wrestling in Colorado is tough because it's geographically isolated. You're not close to many other cities that can support a lot of independent promotions. So it's hard to travel and to bring guys from outside of the area in. And then also I feel like it wasn't a traditionally strong wrestling area. They didn't have strong territories in Colorado.
Right.
Back in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 80s. They had AWA, but AWA would just tour through there. It wasn't like they had wrestling every Thursday night at the city auditorium. You know, it wasn't like that in a lot of those Western states that were more sparsely populated at the time. And so I just feel like there's not really that wrestling tradition there. And so it's definitely been different going to, like when I moved to the Midwest or when I moved to the East Coast. You can see it with the fans. It's just different. Like people come out more and they're more enthusiastic. They know they know what they like to look for. They really know what they want more. I love the Colorado. Don't get me wrong. I love the Colorado fans. I just wish there were more of you guys.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Like I think about that too, and just in my area too, my home state, right? So in Western Nebraska, it's traditionally like a amateur wrestling state, right? It is weird, massive about amateur wrestling. But when it comes to the pro wrestling scene, it is barren. It's so barren.
When I was in college at Chadron State, I wanted to be a pro wrestler. But there was no independent wrestling there. In my mind, it was like, you go to the WCW power plant or something to become a wrestler. Of course, this is way after WCW, but I'm just messing around. Like, I just thought it was like, well, I guess you like go to OVW or whatever their developmental is, and then I found out it was FCW, obviously, at the end of college. But so I had one MMA fight because I was like just going to get into MMA after college because I didn't know how to get into pro wrestling. And as soon as I got the opportunity to pursue pro wrestling, I was like, oh yeah, screw MMA. I was 1-0 in MMA, 1-0 career.
Hey, undefeated. That's what matters.
And then I hung the gloves up, accomplished all I needed to accomplish.
I bet. Well, like you said, you've been traveling around, right? East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, ins and outs everywhere, North and South. So I'm just curious. I need one do and one don't of the wrestling ring.
One do.
I'm sorry. One do, one don't of the locker room.
Ooh, of the locker room. Okay. I'd say one do is try to at least try to at least say hello to everybody in the locker room. Like, I don't think you have to do like the shake hand, like walk around, shake hands, interrupt people's conversations, stuff like that. You don't need to do that. But at least kind of say what's up to everybody that's at the show, because I still think people are, like I said, you're the star of your own show. Sometimes you don't see how your actions are perceived. And so I've had friends that are more introverted and they don't like to say hi to people. Well, some people get offended by that. And you don't want people to think that you're a jerk when you're not really a jerk. So at least say what's up to everybody on the show and just kind of, hey, like I'm sharing a lot with you guys, and be friendly. And then a don't. Oh man. I would say don't. That's a really good question. I would say don't burn a bridge unless it's absolutely necessary. There have been a lot of times when, not a lot of times, but a few times when just over pride or taking a friend's side or just I don't know. I've been trying to mostly it's foolish pride, where you're trying to take a stand or trying to take sides on something when it's unnecessary and you don't need to. And I burned a bridge with someone, and then I've realized, oh wow, that like you think back on the situation, you're like, well, they're not really a bad person. They were just doing what was best for them. And then you're like, well, now I've burned this bridge, and everybody who they're friends with everybody who likes them doesn't probably want to associate with you. And it's all this needless drama and energy. Focus your energy on where it needs to be focused, which should be your own success.
I like that.
Avoid the politics.
Yes, avoid the politics all that you can. It's so easy to get sucked into that world too. And I'm just like,
oh man.
Yeah. I was like, I caught myself a couple times, and then I have some good friends who like support me, right? And we support each other. I should be honest like that. But as soon as I was like, yo, just keep me out of this. And they're like, okay. And so as soon as they start to talk, they're like, shh, go ahead. Yep. I'm like, all right, bet. But those are all my heavy hitting questions. But we do got to get into the second best segment of this podcast. And people are always asking me, what's the first? And I tell them it's the Red Dogs Power Rankings. Yep. You can catch that every Sunday on our debate show. But this is the 3 Count Podcast, 10 count questions. Mr. Dak, this is how it works. I'm going to fire off 10 questions at you rapid fast. Whatever's your answer, that's your answer.
Awesome.
So we're going to put on the imaginary timer for added pressure. Bing! And here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
Raw.
Favorite movie?
Ooh. I can't even think of a movie right now. Oh my God. The Town.
Hey, let's go.
Yeah.
We can talk more about that off the clock. PlayStation or Xbox?
PlayStation.
Favorite color?
Green.
Mario or Sonic?
Mario.
Favorite submission move?
The stretch muffler.
Let's go.
Hey, the Brock Lock.
Elway or Manning?
Manning.
Okay. Favorite podcast?
Well, obviously the 3 Count Podcast. And then second place would be the Flow Wrestling Radio Live podcast, which is It's an amateur wrestling podcast. You guys don't want to listen to it.
No, okay. So pause the clock. No, full transfer. I love that podcast.
Me too. Ben Askren on it. He me up all the time, and he's not doing it intentionally.
Yeah, my one of my friends actually used to write for Flow Wrestling.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So
that's awesome.
All right, back to the clock. Nominate one person that you want to have or you would like to see on this podcast.
One person that I'd like to see on this podcast would be the Mecca Brian Johnson, because he hates doing podcasts, and I love when Brian Johnson is pissed off.
Bet. And last but not least, my favorite question to ask every single person that comes on this podcast. Favorite curse word?
Ooh, my favorite curse word would have to be, well, it probably had to be the one I use the most, which is the F word. Fuck.
Hell yeah.
That's my favorite. And it's funny though, I'm really not a fan of cursing in wrestling. Like, I'm a fan of cursing in wrestling, but only like 1 or 2 guys on a show should do it. And it should be the guys who need it. Like, if a guy's already got like a big fan, traditionally I feel like when guys start cursing in wrestling, it's because they can't get in trouble because the fans are so behind them.
Right.
And I think that's like the fans are already behind them. They shouldn't have, they don't need to curse. A guy that the fans aren't behind should curse, you know? That's what I think. That's my hill to die on.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, hi, buddy. Hi. Yes. Yes, I love you too. So I tell people all the time, I'm like, when you're doing your promos, like full transparency, I love cursing and military, Midwest, all that stuff. I love cursing, but it's funny.
I love it in my normal.
Yeah, when I'm doing promos and stuff like that, I don't curse. And I tell people, and I remember one guy, he would say it all the time, and I stopped him. I stopped him mid promo. I was like, listen, man, there's no reason to curse. I was like, as of 1970, there was 399,993 words. There are 7 of them that you can't say, and I'm pretty sure you could find a word to insert into that word that you're trying to say all the time. And I forced him to think outside the box a little bit, and then he just went back to cursing anyway. And I was like, all right, man, your vocabulary is like this, even though it should be like this.
I feel like a lot of times when guys curse in promos, it comes across so unnatural that it's like, it sounds like a kid whose parents aren't around, who's like really trying to show off all like how much they cuss. And I don't know, it just makes me laugh. It's kind of like when, like for example, when I was wrestling for Rocky Mountain Pro, it was a very fan-friendly show. And Rocky Mountain Pro they run like 80 events a year. They run almost twice every weekend, which is awesome. I got so much better when I was wrestling there just through reps alone. But it's such a fan-friendly show. It was like you had to be careful, like saying ass, you know, or saying damn. You couldn't say damn at their shows. And then they started booking some brewery shows that were 21 and up, and it was like everybody on the roster thought they were stone cold at the first couple of brewery shows, where it's like you have guys who have these like happy-go-lucky characters, these happy-go-lucky guys, and they're like flipping people off and drinking beers in the ring, and you're like, what is this?
Y'all lost your damn minds.
Yeah, every heel doesn't need to flip off the fans.
No, I was like you feel like me, like when I go out to the ring and stuff, like I'm always like high-fiving people, and like I can get that I'm angry, or I can get that I want to curse without cursing. It just makes sense. I'm like, right. And I do tell people, I was like, yo, explore those options because those are so good. You
should have seen Hollywood, Maryland this weekend. There was I come out, I make my entrance. There's a lot of jealous people in Hollywood, Maryland. You know, there are a lot of people that don't have all their teeth, and they're real jealous of somebody like me that can afford dental care, can afford bridges like this. And so there was a little bit of booing, but there was one little girl in the front row, and she stood up, and she was probably like 4 years old, and she reached her hand out for a high five. And I was already up on the ring, but I got down to give her a high five. And her grandma helped her up because I was a little too far away. And right when she could reach, I dropped my hand and just got right back in the ring. And let's just say there could have been a riot in Hollywood, Maryland that
night. So, Mr. Dak, all I need from you is to let our viewers and our listeners know where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, which are that's where I'm most commonly communicating with fans and putting info out there. My handles are at Mile High Magnum, all one word. And then I have a Facebook fan page. It's Dakota Draper. Only my mom calls me that. Only my mom and Facebook call me that. I never update it. So you can go ahead and like it if you want. But you're probably not going to see a whole lot of updates there. Twitter and Instagram is where I'm at mostly. I've got two new shirts that are out. I'm going to be posting in the info on how to get those shirts on Twitter. I'm just going to do it directly because they've had all this stuff with data getting stolen and stuff like that. Dak won't steal your data. I know that I won't steal people's data, so I'm just going to sell the shirts directly to people from for the next couple months till we can lock down all these data breaches.
Yeah, definitely. But you heard it. He gave you his handles. You know, you could go like his Facebook page, even though he may not respond, and it's fine. All right. But then you also can check out his t-shirt. So without that being said, we got to do this like our favorite part of the match. We got to go home because this is the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Entering the Ring. And like I said, I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up this mountain called wrestling. But Like every good Sherpa, you got to have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficiently than you can. And that's why it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. And you see him right there, the Mile High Magnum himself, Dak Draper. You guys know what to do. Tune into the next episode and be there, or you accidentally elbow your dog in the snout. My bad, bro. Or you wait for this episode to end, you wait for that outro, and then you choose another episode to listen to. Peace. What's going on, 3 Count Nation? I'm Clifford Red Dog Miller with the catchphrase. But what I really want you to do right now, go to twitter.com, right? Go over there, find us at the 3count_pod, give us a follow, give us a like, give us a comment. We want to talk to you guys. Go to IG at the 3count_pod. Give us a like, give us a follow, leave us a comment. We want to interact with you. Go to youtube.com, give us a subscribe, turn the bell on, turn the notifications, leave a comment. We want to talk to you. Go to anchor.fm/the 3count podcast, and in there, you can leave us a message, and we will talk to you. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that we want to talk to you. We want to have fun with you guys, and we love listening to what you guys have to say. Also, one thing I need you to do for me, the 3count podcast also has merchandise. Oh! At prowrestlingtees.com/the 3count pod. Please go buy our t-shirts. We love you guys, and we hope you love us too. So, show us some support, please.